Even though the thumbnail for this video asks the question, can it VR? I think you already know the 4070 Super is plenty capable of running PC VR games. The real question is how well can the 4070 Super run VR games, and that's what this video is here to answer. For those of you wondering how it runs VR's reigning title holder of Best VR Game, Half-Life Alyx, this footage is of the 4070 Super running Half-Life Alyx at a render resolution of 4704 by 2528 at 120 Hz, using Alyx's highest graphics setting preset of Ultra Fidelity. The 4070 Super is fully capable of offering up all the goods in this game. Maxed out graphical settings, sharp, high-resolution visuals, all at a fast, smooth 120 frames per second. I don't know how much longer Half-Life Alyx will retain its title as VR's best game, but for those of you who haven't played it before, or played it a long time ago using lesser settings on older hardware, the 4070 Super delivers this game in all its glory. Other games the 4070 Super ran at 4704 by 2528 at 120 Hz, near the maximum settings of those games, are Breachers, Contractors, Pavlov, Beat Saber, The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, and Red Matter 2. Despite not being able to run these games at their maximum settings at this resolution and frame rate, they still looked really good. And being at 120 FPS, they ran nice and smooth. You, of course, do not have to use the same settings I'm using here. To be honest, I feel the render resolution of 4704 by 2528 I'm using is higher than I need to use, seeing as I do my testing with a Quest 3, whose native resolution is 4128 by 2208, which is about a 24% lower pixel count. So I really could lower the render resolution down some more and free up some performance headroom, which could then be used to increase settings in other areas. I use this higher resolution though because there are other PC VR headsets out there with higher resolution displays than the Quest 3. So my hope is this will help those people at least get an idea of what a particular graphics card will be able to deliver with their headset. And running with the resolution that high, it gives us some really nice sharp graphics, which I really like. So that's why I use 4704 by 2528 as my main resolution for this kind of testing. If a game won't run at 120 Hz at that resolution, however, the first thing I'll do is lower the refresh rate, which is what I did for the next couple of games here. The first of which is Lone Echo 2, and the 4070 Super ran it at 4704 by 2528 at 90 Hz using the in-game settings you see on screen now. Moving around in the large open areas of this game, I saw great performance, with plenty of headroom still available. But once you moved inside and things are being rendered at higher detail, that headroom all but disappeared. The 4070 Super was, however, able to maintain 90 FPS in even the most detailed, demanding areas of the game at these settings, and the game both looked amazing and ran smoothly. The other game I was able to run at 4704 by 2528 at 90 Hz was Into the Radius. Now this is the first game and not the second one, for those who might be wondering. I've had some people comment in several of my other Can It VR videos asking me to test Into the Radius 2, but I haven't got around to buying that yet. So yeah, anyway, it looks like I'm going to need to be updating my test suite of games here in the not too distant future. Into the Radius is a game I have owned for several years now, but actually haven't spent much time playing, so those of you who do play it a lot will probably recognize I'm not very far into it at all. But anyway, we're here to talk about the performance. For the most part, the 4070 Super crushed this game at the settings you see on screen now. And normally with this much performance headroom, I would bump settings up further, but in some areas of the game, like when you're at this pond with the reflections on the water and stuff, performance headroom drops a lot. So to keep game performance smooth at all times, these are the settings I settled on. The remainder of the games I tested, I ended up lowering the render resolution from 4704 by 2528. As the 4070 Super wasn't able to maintain the frame rate I wanted when using the in-game settings I also wanted. The first of these was Ghosts of Tabor. I lowered the render resolution for this one notch to 4480 by 2400 because there are some areas of this game that seemingly just absolutely assault your GPU. In many areas of this game, I think the 4070 Super can handle the higher render resolution just fine, but in other areas like this one here, our performance headroom completely disappears. Overall though, at the settings I landed on, the 4070 Super delivers a pretty consistent 90 FPS. And while Ghosts of Tabor isn't the most visually impressive game out there, at these settings, the graphics look sharp and crisp. But of course, gameplay is arguably far more important than visuals, and in that regard, the 4070 Super delivered a very good experience. It wasn't perfect, but I think that has more to do with the game itself than the 4070 Super. I do affectionately refer to this game as the jank of Tabor after all. Blade and Sorcery also ran well on the 4070 Super at 4480 by 2490 Hz, using the in-game settings listed on screen. And throughout most of my testing, I actually ran the game with super sampling set to 1.25. But there were certain magic effects, like this firebomb thing, that would really impact our frame rate. So I dialed super sampling down to 1.0, which helped the frame rate recover more quickly in those instances. I've got a confession to make. I am not a big sim racer, but I know others of you out there are, so this one's for you guys. Assetto Corsa Competizione is another game I lowered the render resolution to 4480 by 2400 for and set the refresh rate to 90 Hz. As for the in-game settings, I like to keep things simple, so I used the VR high preset and then increased the resolution scale from 80% to 90% and turned the VR pixel density down from 120% to 110%. And while the 4070 Super didn't help me win any races, it did at least offer some nice looking visuals and a pretty consistent 90 FPS as I fumbled my way around the track. The last game in our lineup is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. At the risk of sounding somewhat like a broken record, I'm not big into flight simulators either. While I do enjoy a lap around the track, or the occasional aerial tour, I'm more into shooters, which probably isn't too hard to guess, as the majority of the games in this video are either full-on shooters or their core mechanic has something to do with using virtual firearms. I tell you this because as far as I'm aware, the real sim pilots out there don't use the settings I use here. My understanding is they usually go for higher detail and quality settings and are okay with only getting around 30 FPS and use reprojection to get the frame rate up where things don't feel so choppy. Now, I could be totally wrong about this. Like I said, I am not a sim pilot, so what do I know? Anyway, when testing a GPU in VR, what I try to do in Flight Simulator is get the game to run at 72 FPS in this training flight over Sedona, Arizona. And in order to do that with the 4070 Super, I had to lower the render resolution to 3936 by 2112, which is just slightly lower than the native resolution of the Quest 3. As for the in-game settings, I set everything at the lowest level, but set render scaling, world scale, terrain level of detail, and objects level of detail to 100. And this is what I got, a nice solid 72 FPS. What really surprised me, though, was the performance as I queued up the Discovery flight over New York City. Since I started doing my Can It VR videos, I've tested something like 15 different GPUs, and while testing the 4070 Super, this is the first time I can remember being able to maintain 72 FPS in this flight, or at least close to maintaining it. Now, while this is great, this result has just as much to do with the CPU I'm using in my test PC as the GPU, because Flight Simulator is a very CPU-heavy game, and the faster your CPU is, the better performance you're potentially going to see. In past tests, I was using the Ryzen 7 5800X3D, which at the time was the fastest gaming CPU available. I then upgraded to the 7800X3D, which was decently faster than the 5800X3D, and now I'm using the 9800X3D, which is the current fastest gaming CPU money can buy. And I'm thinking the improved frame rate in this New York City flight over past tests I've done with top-end GPUs like the RTX 4080 and the RX 7900 XTX has more to do with the fact I'm using the 9800X3D than the 4070 Super being more powerful than those other GPUs, because it's not. That being said, it is awesome to see the power of the 9800X3D on display here, helping the 4070 Super flex its muscles to this extreme. For anyone curious about the specs of my test PC, I've listed the full system specifications in the video description. This is now the part of the video where normally I'd talk about whether I feel the 4070 Super is worth buying or not. Seeing as I'm a good year or more late making this video, that bit of advice is a bit moot at this point, because the only way to get one now is to buy one secondhand. And with the current PC graphics card market being a bit of a crap show, I feel I'm more talking to people who already own 4070 Supers rather than those looking to buy one. So, flashing back to the question at the beginning of the video, how well does the 4070 Super run PC VR games? Well, I think the answer to that question has been obvious. Pretty darn well.
That's good.
Other than Flight Simulator, the 4070 Super was able to run all the games I threw at it at 90 or 120 Hz at very high resolutions and using high detail settings. If you've been thinking about getting into PC VR and haven't yet used your 4070 Super to do so, I think you're going to be very pleased with the experience you're going to get. And that goes for those who might be looking to pick up a 4070 Super as well. Come on, do it. You know you want to. Subscribe!